So hello and welcome to the Youth and Innovation session here at the Making Global Goals Local Business Africa Regional event. My name is Manda, and for the next hour, we'll be discussing the Youth and Innovation theme. And I look forward to this robust conversation with the amazing panel that we have here today. Before I introduce the panel, however, just a few housekeeping notes for those at home. Please feel free to always pose your questions on the chat box during the session, and we will be sure to get through as many as we can of your questions. You can also continue the conversation on social media using the hashtag Global Goals Local Business, hashtag Global Goals Local Business. And remember that a recording of today's session will be available on the UN Global Compact's YouTube page following the event, as well as available on podcast and UN Radio in the coming weeks. Stay tuned for more information on those channels in the coming weeks. Now I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our panel for today. So on our panel today, we've got four very distinguished guests, people who know a lot more than I do about the conversation that we're about to have. And I know that you are going to be you're going to enjoy this session so much, and you're going to learn so much from us and from the panel that we have. So first of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Jill Bogie. She's a joint lead faculty at the Gordon's Institute of Business Science in South Africa. Jill, please say hello and tell us a bit about yourselves in just 2 sentences, if you may.
Thank you, Manda, and thank you to everybody that's taking part and listening to this session. Yes, I'm at GIBS, as we like to call it, and I'm responsible for the GIBS relationship with the UN Global Compact and specifically to do with the principles of responsible management education. And my second sentence is that essentially what I do is teach about strategic foresight and sustainability, and I do that with our master's students. So that's me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jill. That was short and sweet. I think we should always restrict people to 2 lines, because then they have to choose their words very carefully and they tell you what's really important to them. And I'm going to do the same to George Asamani, and he's the business development leader at the Africa at Project Management. Sorry, he's the business development leader for the African division of Project Management, the Project Management Institute. George, please tell us a bit about yourself in 2 lines.
Thank you, Manda. So as you pointed out, I'm Business Development Leader for Africa for the Project Management Institute, also known as PMI. PMI is the organization that provides the global benchmark for the project management profession. So it's all about translating ideas into reality. And my role there is to help to facilitate that reality, so that impact that people are making on the ground, I help to facilitate that through directly by partnering with organizations or through our chapters on the ground.
Thank you, George. Our next speaker is Barry Moumini, and Barry is an entrepreneur from Morocco. That's all I have on Barry. So Barry, hopefully you can elaborate, give us a bit more about yourself in your 2 sentences.
Yeah, I'm Barry Moumini. I'm an entrepreneur who come from Ivory Coast. I live there since 2015. And yeah, I'm a writer too, and I love Africa. That's why I decided to come here to Morocco and to start my enterprise. Yeah.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you very much. Last but not least, personal friend and one of the people I have had the pleasure of working with in the past year, YSIP alumni, Young SDGs Innovators Program, and also an ESG analyst at the Public Investment Corporation, Dilona Somai. Please tell us about yourself in 2 lines, please.
Thank you, Manda. So my name is Dilona Somai, and I'm an ESG associate at the Public Investment Corporation, which is an asset management firm wholly owned by the government of the Republic of South Africa, which is represented by the Minister of Finance, and is by far the largest in Africa as well. My role is to undertake ESG due diligence for potential investments, as well as post-investment monitoring of investments itself, including actively engaging with various stakeholders.
You cheated more than 2 sentences, but still okay. So my mentors have taught me well. They've taught me that you never use acronyms, and I assume everyone knows what you're talking about. So I'm going to ask Dilona to tell us, to unpack what is ESG to someone who has never heard of ESG. How would you define and describe ESG?
Wow, thanks for putting me on the spot there. So yes, ESG actually stands for Environmental, Social and Governance, Manda. And we look at those 3 aspects in terms of any investment that we would like to make. And also during the course of the investment, we look to enhancing a company's environmental, social and governance obligations that they have, whether it is from a legislative perspective or really just purely good governance and good business practice.
Thank you for that. You do well under pressure. All right, so just to remind you, today's session will focus on highlighting the innovation that can be created by engaging the youth and the opportunity potentials around the SDGs. And I don't think I have to lecture anyone in the call or on this session around what SDGs are and the importance of the SDG agenda and the opportunities for business and entrepreneurs like Barry that lie within the SDG space. This session will also demonstrate the importance of SDG and the opportunities around for youth in the SDGs, not only by highlighting the YSIP success stories, but also by engaging institutions that develop and engage youth in Africa. And as you see, we've got a variety of stakeholders that represent different sectors of society. So hopefully we can get different voices and at the end of the day, be able to give some input that would help develop the African youth around the SDG agenda. So without further ado, we're going to kick off, and I'm going to start with you, Dr. Jill. So I would like us to discuss the focus on the role of institutions like business schools on developing the African youth. And the first question that I'd like to pose to you is, what is the role of business schools in creating an enabling environment for the youth in Africa? Dr. Jill.
Nice question. And I'm going to keep it not to 2 sentences, but 3 points. So my first point is really that I think that as business schools, we having the responsibility to teach leaders and future leaders in Africa. Obviously, we're in South Africa, but it's an Africa conversation. I think it's about recognizing new ways of doing business in the 21st century and the role of business. And within that, I think it's really important that we give students and young people the confidence to follow their instincts, to do things differently, to be creative, give them the space, and most importantly, give them the permission and the opportunity to do new things, to do things differently. So that's speaking more from a corporate environment rather than entrepreneurship, because corporate environment can be quite restricting. And I think it's about developing a business world where we think about new opportunities of possibilities, where business can be a space where people can flourish, where people can be fulfilled, are able to do meaningful work. And I think that would allow them to prosper in many different ways, not just economically. And I think that the younger generation have such great ideas. They have the energy, they have the passion, but institutions are often places where people need to conform and comply. So I think that many corporate business people might have lost their entrepreneurial past. Hence, we will be speaking to Barry later and getting his passion and energy. So that's my first point. But I do mention that, you know, we have to do this, but still respect what we have, the knowledge and experience of others, that there are multiple different perspectives here. And I do think that now's the time for change. Young people can show us the way. I have a couple of other points, Manda, but maybe you would like somebody else to speak and come back, or I can cover those 2 points as well.
No, please cover those points as well. And just at the end, just remind us what the 3 points are so that they stand out distinctly for us.
Okay, so there was my first point about doing business differently and allowing people to flourish. The second one is about teaching, because after all, we're a business school, and I work with other faculty and other business schools around the world. I think it's not only about teaching innovation and design, but it's also about teaching systems thinking, something that I think came up in YSIP quite a lot. So systems thinking, complexity, and futures thinking longer terms. And they're not subjects that business schools are, or business school students are commonly exposed to. And why is that? I think that's because business schools, our clients are corporate business. And so we are looking at what do business expect us to teach. And I think, therefore, and corporate business, I think, is slow to take up these ideas. Systems thinking in the boardroom, complexity in the boardroom, not so comfortable. So I think there's a view that I hold that in a complex environment, you need to manage the context, not the people. You need to respect that people and trust that people have the skills, have the expertise, and are willing to do their best work if you allow them to. And I think that is really important in a complex or a systems context. And I think many of us have experienced that in the last 9 months, where we are surprised that we can trust people to do a good job, where for me, that should be the norm. And I think that's particularly important for young people, but actually for anybody in an organization, this context of trust. So you hire people for their expertise, and then you try and control what they do. And I know that there needs to be boundaries, but the boundaries are very tight. So that's my second point, which is about systems thinking and complexity. And last but not least, it's about adopting a collaborative approach and working together. So at a business school, it's teaching, well, how do you do that? So business schools have taught competitive advantage and the competitive landscape. And so where's the teaching about how do we collaborate? And we need to practice what we preach. We need to teach this. And I think that's how you get exposed to new ideas. You know, we need to be able to question the current way of doing things, because we are still working with 20th century constructs. We are still working in strategy, in finance, with the way that things were done 50 years ago. And that's not good enough. We're 20 years into the 21st century. And science and technology and the engineers of the world are changing fast. So other parts of the business like finance, law, HR also need to change. And I think that we've learned so much from initiatives, business initiatives like Business for South Africa, where partnerships have been the way that South Africa has built manufacturing capacity, that has done it together in a way that many businesses are now saying, how can we do more of this? How can we scale this up in other parts of other sectors, other parts of business? And I think that also means involving younger people with different areas of expertise and multiple perspectives. So that's my third thing, is collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. So I'm gonna segue, and I'm gonna talk to the other panelists just a bit. So George, Dilona, and Barry, and I'm going to keep it really simple. For Barry, I just want to understand a bit more about what your business is all about. So if you could just think about the shortest way to describe what you do as an entrepreneur and how you innovate, because we're talking about the SDGs and we're talking about breakthrough innovation. So I just want to know a practical example that would get people thinking about exactly the topic that we're talking about, with a practical example like Barry in the room. But for George, I would like to know from you, so in the project management space, there's fixed rules. I mean, you necessarily draw a linear chart with every project. You've got start, you've got end, and you've got resources. And you find that in most organizations, as Jill was saying, there are skills that are missing with regards to understanding the current context. She spoke quite a lot about context, and the SDGs are a new context. How are you finding the permeating of this SDG knowledge into companies and in the spaces in which you work? And how is this affecting the way projects are undertaken and the way people work together in companies to get their work completed and to run everyday business? George.
I think, yeah, thanks for that, Manda. So I think just in terms of, first of all, awareness of SDGs, what we're seeing across sectors, and not just within the project management profession, but literally, across all sectors, there's more and more of an awareness of the SDGs. And because there's more of an awareness, there are actually more organizations who are, who are either visionary and actually adopting some of the SDGs in practical terms. But then also there are those organizations who essentially, are doing it because, it's the thing to do, etc. So in terms of, what we, what I would say, or what we would say as an organization for companies who would want to transform their business models, what I'll say is first, make a commitment to sign up to the SDGs and set the vision for the organization. Second, I think spend time looking at the business model, and not only the business model, but also the company culture, the human interactions. How does the organization interact with external stakeholders, not only the internal your internal staff, and then benchmark. Figure out how does the business model and company culture, how does it line up to the global compact principles, or some of the buckets of the sustainable development goals, like whether it's universal access to basic services or fostering innovation. And then I think it's also about just looking at what aspect of the business model can evolve towards the SDGs, or in other words, what can you change to get 1 or 2 or 3 steps closer to the SDGs. So so if you're Tom's, then you're giving away, for example, a pair of shoes for every shoe you sell. But at PMI, what we're doing is we volunteered this year over 150,000 hours, and that's 150,000 hours of project management on projects that advance the sustainable development goals. So for example, enabling youth with project skills through project management skills for life, or another example is providing access to services through some of our chapters. For example, the chapter in Angola, spent a lot of time this year building water and sanitation facilities for those who need it. So I guess what I'm saying is ultimately it's about looking at the business models, committing to the SDGs, because effectively we're seeing that it adds purpose, in the sense that when you start with purpose, when you commit, when you implement SDG initiatives, which in effect progress society, you have more people who are able to move from just having a job to survive to a job with purpose, and they become more attracted to that job with purpose. So if you started with that purpose, or if you're an organization with purpose, you start to tend to attract that sort of talent.
Thank you, George. And Dilona, I think, because I know PIC is a South African company, I can hear similarities with what George has been describing. But one of the challenges that I find in corporates, and I'm going to bring it in the youth element quite soon, but one of the challenges is if the company itself does not understand the SDG agenda, and also if the company doesn't have that the know-how with regards to innovating around the SDGs, if the ESG division or the environment or the sustainability division within the bank are the only people who understand SDGs, then you'll find that innovation will be lacking around the SDGs around the whole business. And you will always be expected to speak on SDGs, but it will never be embedded in such a way that it brings about a change in society. How does a company like PIC navigate around issues like that? As an ESG expert, how do you ensure the embedding of sustainable development goals within the greater company?
So Manda, for us at the PIC, we have a lot of awareness programs that we run. Because we have various divisions within the PIC, we have an ESG listed and an unlisted department, and each of the ESG teams actually feeds into all of the different portfolios and sectors that we work within. So say, for instance, I personally work on sectors like healthcare, roads and transport, oil and gas, and the healthcare sectors. So within the portfolios that I work within, the deal team that I work with, or the portfolio management and valuations team that I work with, or risk and legal, we all get together whenever we are looking at transactions, and we engage with each other on the various topics. So legal will share with us their legal views and opinions on certain matters. And likewise, from an environmental, social, and governance perspective, we would come in and say what are important to us that we identify with certain transactions. This is even at the stage where we even want to invest within a company. So one of the critical aspects of doing an environmental, social, and governance due diligence is to really understand all of those elements within an investee company or a potential investment, understand how they are actually contributing towards the SDGs, if they even are, or how we can actually assist them in really understanding that their business or their activities actually do contribute to the SDGs, and they just don't really know it. So it's a process of actively engaging with the various departments within the PIC. It's a process of engaging our various stakeholders, including the investee companies that we monitor, companies that we want to invest within as well. And it's also a process of engaging with other stakeholders, such as our clients, who we are ultimately responsible to report to in terms of the mandate that we have from them in terms of investments and investing.
Thank you for that, Dilona. I'm going to come to Barry, but before I go to Barry, I'm going to ask you a question that I need you to think about, so that when I come back to you next time, when we come to your set of questions, you've got a good answer for me. So we've got someone like a Barry who's an entrepreneur, and their business is all about SDGs. It's built on the SDGs. But you find that because they're coming in at a very early stage, big entities like the PIC and even some banks are not able to fund them. What do you think is needed in order for us to unlock finance and investment for people who are innovating around the SDGs? And you don't have to answer me now. Please have a think about that. And when we come to you, I'll be interested in hearing about that, because I think without finance, without investment, youth will always be left out of the market. Now coming over to you, Barry, we would like to hear what your business is all about and how does it help meet some of the SDGs? So in a summary, please just tell us about your business.
Okay. So in the case of my startup, it's called MyDoc.ma. It is a telemedicine startup. We are part of the objective of sustainable development, and we are more emphasis on the goal 17. And that one of the clear objectives of MyDoc is the sharing of both technological and human skills in Africa. We came to want to pull effort in telemedicine with the French-speaking African countries, and to create a continental doctor, a network of continental doctors. And yeah, we will get there.
Thank you very much for that, Barry. And please don't report me. I know I'm not supposed to ask you a lot of questions because you are Francophone and not a first English speaker, but I think that was very helpful to us. So thank you for that. All right, back to you, Dr. Jill. So my second question for you is, how can institutions like yourself, business schools, ensure that youth take on the role of creating a thriving Africa where no one is left behind?
Nice question. And I have to first connect back to some of the wonderful comments that George made about business with purpose, and also what Barry was saying about a network and SDG 17. And I think that more specifically towards your question, though, Amanda, about how can business schools support youth and creating this thriving Africa. I think obviously innovation and creativity are really important so that individuals, communities, the economy, countries can thrive. But I think we've got a lot to learn from young people. And I think we should value their opportunity, their contribution more. So a couple of points here. First, I think that young people can do much more than we give them credit for. And when I say we, I mean the incumbents in business, the professionals, the executives in business who probably learned the art and craft of science, like myself, in the 20th century and are still operating like that. Not everybody, but that's kind of the dominant way of looking at things. And business schools still teach that. And you know, thankfully, some like Gibbs are more progressive, but corporates still expect the basics from their students. The second point is that business schools are the domain of corporates. So first of all, I think that while business focuses a lot on problem solving and risk management, and these are essential, I think business schools and I think young people and future leaders need to have something more than that. They need to understand more about opportunities. They need to understand more about entrepreneurship. We're very proud at Gibbs to have an entrepreneurship development academy that's been in existence since 2012. But entrepreneurship is not necessarily something that business schools typically teach. And I think it's such an essential skill, whether you're going to start a small business, whether you're going to start small and scale up, or whether you're actually in a division or a business unit of a bigger corporate. And I also think that business schools, as indeed prime schools are, which is the community that Gibbs is part of, and that there is an expanding or a need to expand prime business schools throughout Africa, is to teach more about the role of business in society, their social and environmental responsibilities. And for me, I'm an advocate of SDGs being part of core business strategy. Doesn't matter what size of business, and so many corporates have CSR and CSI. I'm showing with my hands, it's like a sideline, something on the side, and that's not good enough. It's good, it's important, but it's not nearly enough. We have to go way beyond CSR. We need to be building this into core business strategy. We can't just have entrepreneurs like Barry who are doing this, and big corporates are not doing enough. And lastly, I think that every business person has opportunities to explore growth and new markets that actually are based on the SDGs. Whether it's healthcare, whether it's engineering, whatever it might be, renewable energy. And I think these are things that businesses and business schools need to be making sure that people really are equipped to look into the long term, to look 10 years out and beyond. And obviously in the decade of action, we're looking ahead to 2030. But so few businesses are doing that. So for me, it's about we need to be talking a lot about opportunities and action, not so much the thinking this time, opportunities and action. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that. And you did answer my next question, but I've thought about another interesting question that I'll come back to you with just now. So moving back to George. So George, maybe just explain to us, what is the role of institutions like the PMI in creating the kind of Africa that we want? I mean, an Africa where the youth unemployment is not sky high. I mean, South Africa has probably the highest youth unemployment in most of Africa. I don't know how we compare to other African countries. What do you think your institution's role is in creating that kind of Africa?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. Actually, that's a very good question, and it ties into the comment that was made earlier, actually, about youth and startups not getting funding from large organizations. So I think our role actually is, I'll describe it as to signpost and to equip, and I'll just explain. So at PMI, we conduct a lot of research, on global trends, and we share this research with our stakeholders and wider for their benefit. And this includes research on the youth and also sharing with the youth. And we also recognize youth talent now, like we do with our Future 50 report. And so that's what I mean by signposting. So through this, we see that yes, the youth quake in Africa is a game changer. We see that yes, the world's fastest growing cities are in Africa, and there are a lot of change makers in these cities. There are a lot of very young and hungry people ready to make an impact, and who are making an impact. So part of our role is to equip them now. So at PMI, our view is that young people or youth around the world have enormous capacity for leadership. So it's not in the distant future. It's not one day you'll fulfill your potential, but it's actually now. And I stress this. I stress today, or I stress now, because when you look around the world, 41% of the world's population is under the age of 25, and obviously that's even more in Africa. And this is not representative of organizations or government. So we see part of our role as an enabler of leaders, an enabler of young leaders, and this is why I say equip. And what we've done so far at PMI, we've done a number of things. So we have a VP of youth. This is somebody who engages at the senior most level of the organization, because decisions about the future should not be made without the future. We also have what we call PMI 50, which I mentioned earlier. It's an initiative that recognizes and empowers young leaders today to continue excelling today, and not wait to that day in the future, but to do it now. And then also we have obviously we have skills development as a project management institute, because we see project skills as critical to any kind of change. It's critical to driving change. It's critical to implementing. Joe was just saying about so like the decade of action, moving from thinking to doing an action, and that's what we're about. We've been very, very intentional about targeting people outside of the project management profession, because we call people who are outside of the profession change makers. So we're very focused on enabling change makers across all sectors of industry who find themselves leading projects or running startups or leading change, and making things happen wherever they are. So I just to summarize what I'm saying, one is we've got a lot of research. We signpost the research because not everybody knows the trend that's happened. Some people work in silos and they're not aware of the trends and what's going on around them. But because of the organization we have a lot of data, a lot of information which we share. We consume that data ourselves and we share with our partners. And then in addition to that, we also equip, as I mentioned, equipping the youth, supporting the youth, giving the youth a voice, encouraging the youth through some of the things that I mentioned.
Sorry.
You're on mute.
Thank you, George. My mic was muted.
No worries.
The statement of 2020, you're on mute. Thank you very much for that, George. And moving over to Barry, as a young entrepreneur, how important do you think business innovation is, and how could the youth best leverage what business has to offer when it comes to opportunities for innovation?
Yeah. First of all, I want to clarify one point. I'm an entrepreneur, but I was chosen in my last year of my postgraduate studies by African Impact Investment Fund, which is a Casablanca investment fund for the realization of the telemedicine project. And I had all their confidence and all the support. And the project was entrusted to a young man from a business school who was not completely ready to face the world of entrepreneurship, but to whom they have given a total confidence for the realization of a large-scale project, and this from the reflection phase to the implementation phase. And this type of initiative must be multiplied. The main fear of a young person when embarking on entrepreneurship is that he feels that he has to deal with an unknown and complex world. And supporting entrepreneur can really be I don't know how to say it, but it's important to support entrepreneur, the young entrepreneur.
Thank you very much. It definitely is important. And on that note, I'm going to move over to Dilona, who's going to tell us a bit about her YSIP experience. And Dilona, the question for you is, what role do programs like YSIP play in business?
Thanks, Vanda. So, traditionally businesses tend to focus on purely profits, as opposed to the triple bottom line being profit, people, and planet. And by providing businesses with a platform or an opportunity like YSIP to have their employees actively participate in these programs, really provides business with a new dimension to consider as a result of the innovations that actually that came out of these challenges. It gives employees an opportunity to think beyond their current roles and responsibilities within an organization. So, for example, if you don't work in research and development or innovation within your organization, you'll always be confined to the sole responsibilities that you have only. Whereas with opportunities like YSIP, we were actually provided with a creative and enabling environment for us to think beyond with just complying with what our business actually requires. What I've actually experienced from this program is that the innovations that actually have come out of the challenge not just impacts on the achievement of the SDGs, but it also has the ability to impact on an organization's daily operations and activities and just create efficiencies and synergies. If it's really implemented by organizations, it has the ability to enhance not just their profits, but planet and people and the triple bottom line, essentially.
Very nicely made, that point that you've made there. And I guess essentially what I'm hearing you say then is YSIP is one tool that is enabling youth innovation to happen within corporate spaces. Having said that, coming back to you, Dr. Jill, and this is an unscripted question, and I know you can handle it. So programs like YSIP have shown that they're important for businesses to introduce youth innovation into business. But when I work within the corporate space, I still see the silos and the hierarchies, and you find that accountants only want to think as accountants, and you find that engineers only want to do engineering, and it's very difficult for innovation for the SDGs to happen within that space. And often you will find that the spaces like those created by YSIP you're not able to create such spaces. And I think the question then becomes, how do you think that business schools like GIBS could help current business leaders? And you stress the point that we've got people in leadership positions who are still stuck with the 20th century kind of thinking. How do we tweak the thinking of the current leadership to ensure that the importance of innovation and youth innovation within business is embedded through education? How can GIBS, through its offerings, help solve for that?
Thank you for that question. I will do my best. I think, first of all, business schools are part of very well-established institutions. I think that fortunately, some business schools, those that I work with as part of this prime network that is around the world, are already, we're involved in that program because we are business schools who are integrating the SDGs into our teaching, into our research, into our own business practices. So that, I think, makes a big difference, because business schools, like businesses, have baggage, but there are benefits as well. And so I think focusing on the SDGs, you can't focus on the SDGs, you can't teach them in silos. And I think that businesses, everybody around the world has really, if there has to be a positive that's come out of this crisis and this pandemic, it is a lot about how people work together, how people collaborate, how people can be valued for the contribution that they make, for volunteering for something that is much more important than an individual organization, an individual on our own. I mean, we come from a society which is so driven by individual performance. I mean, our business school sits in the middle of Santon, you know, what they call the richest square mile in Africa. So it's a real, it was up until March, a very, very competitive space. So for me, business schools, certainly the way that we teach, is working in groups, in syndicates, doing things collaboratively and learning to value each other, not only thinking about one's own individual mark at the end of the day, but the learning process of interacting with each other. And unfortunately, our students are missing a lot of that interaction, even if we are on Zoom, because it is more difficult. But I think collaboration, whether it's for business, whether it's for how we teach, how we interact with our students, I think collaboration and partnership is really something that needs to have far more emphasis to balance this hugely competitive way that we work across the world, wherever we are. So for me, it's about collaboration and how to do that in practice. So for me, that's the way to develop opportunities, to allow people to flourish. And I love the new hashtag that we hear so much nowadays, which is Build Back Better. But for me, I think young people can show us how to do this. And I have great faith in young entrepreneurs, young leaders, and the new ideas and the innovation that they bring.
Thank you, Dr. Jill. You handled that like a pro, and you've actually got me sold in that if I study at KIPS, I will not go out with a silo mentality, but I will be all about collaboration, which I think is what is missing in a lot of businesses today. So that's very, very important.
Thank you.
George, coming back to you. So you spoke about some opportunities that you as the PMI have for the youth. And I just want to hear a bit more from you around how can you leverage these opportunities that you guys have.
Okay, sure. So throughout this year, we've run several free initiatives, and it's like I'll underline free because I think that's important. So these initiatives enable the youth in the region, again, coming back to execution. It's all about training to execute. And we do this through partners, partner organizations, through our chapters, and then in some instances, directly with individual. Some of what we've done this year. So, for example, if you're familiar with the Tony Alumile Foundation, they're the largest solar entrepreneurship foundation in Africa. We partnered together to deliver training on project management for entrepreneurship. So this is a masterclass on our speciality, which is making ideas into reality, as I keep on saying. And what that entailed was a 6-part webinar series over a period of 3 months, where every session, with a session is an hour, you had literally tens of thousands of young people from all over Africa log on each session. Each session was focused on a different aspect of business, whether you're talking about strategy or risk management, or your lean startup and the ability to be agile. We looked at a different part of business, and then overlap that with project management, so that we could talk about how to execute that aspect of business. So that was one, the Tony Alumni Foundation, and these are, initiatives like these are completely open and free across the continent. And I think it's a case of young people or youth, being on our radar, or so that they're able to take advantage of these initiatives when they come up. Another couple of things that we've done, we ran what we call the Youth Quake competition, which is a competition across the continent where we ask people to send in a video of new innovations that they're running, and the winner was awarded, the grand prize was awarded to somebody who built a project in sustainable farming. And the reason we're doing that is what I mentioned earlier on, is just to continue to bring the visibility to youth, and to highlight the readiness of youth. And then this final point, there's a lot more that we do, but the final point I want to mention is we have something called Project Management Skills for Life. Again, it's free, and we provide project management training through schools and universities on the basics of project management. And it's all about, again, equipping the youth to turn ideas into reality. I know this year we've worked quite closely with the University of Pretoria and several other universities across Africa. And we're going to be doing this and more in 2021. So in terms of a question, how can people get involved? There's a lot to leverage. There's a lot to benefit from. And I'll just take this opportunity to say that we're looking for partners, because the more partners we have, the more youth can leverage these opportunities. So this is a call for partners to get in touch as well. And as I said, that there's a lot more which I'm happy to share offline, or when people look at our website or the booth, there's quite a bit of information there.
I like that you're making a call for partners, because that's exactly what SDG 17 is all about. Right. In order for us to achieve the SDGs, we need to work closer together. And I also like the example you made there around the competition element, where young people are entering competitions. And I think we need to see more of those. I know that Gibbs runs something called the Festival of Ideas. It's a very similar concept where a young person gets to win a cash prize towards their businesses. And I've seen some young people start some really nice businesses from that kind of element. So that's definitely something that we need more collaboration on, because it lowers the barrier for entry. You don't need any set of qualifications. You just need to have an idea, and your idea can take you all the way to concept and to startup, just through the prize that you can win. Thank you very much for that.
Exactly.
We move to the entrepreneur on the call. So Barry, how can business create an enabling environment to support youth to thrive within business?
You can repeat?
Yes, so how can business create an enabling environment to support youth to thrive within business? How can business help young people to be able to make it within the business fraternity? Oh, did we lose Barry? All right, I'll skip Barry for now. Hopefully he'll join us back shortly. I'll move over to Dilona as we wait for Barry. So Dilona, the opportunity to be on YSIP, so many other companies have an opportunity to be part of that program. How do you think young people should engage opportunities like YSIP?
Thanks, Manda. When we joined the program, I must admit that I personally found it to be disruptive to my daily responsibilities. We've had to take off a few days out of every month, tap out of work, and just concentrate on the program itself. And as months went by, I realized how much I looked forward to our sessions, since we were learning so much, and how we identified existing challenges within our organizations, and came up with solutions that linked to the ultimate achievement of SDGs that we identified as well. And then I thought about the impact that I'm making as an individual. And I went all the way back to the concept of sustainable development, leaving behind a better world for future generations. And I realized that whilst I'm only one person, I can certainly make an impact, and I can do this through actively participating in programs like the YSIP. I would encourage the youth to actively seek out and being involved in these opportunities so that they can be part of implementing the SDGs and the achievement thereof. I see us as the youth playing a big role, not just in economic growth, but at the same time demonstrating societal value as well. And these programs provide us with that enabling environment that we need. On a personal level, I find these opportunities encourage us to really become future fit and responsible leaders, Manda.
Sorry about that. You always have to remember to unmute yourself. So what I find interesting is you come from a background that involves no innovation. You come from a background that, I mean, you're an ESG expert, and opportunities like YSIP help you to be able to think about how you go about solving the problems through the tools that you get along the way. And I don't think I can overstress the importance of those programs that help you to not only see problems, but to start seeking out solutions and to think about how those solutions can be made sustainable by being made into profitable ventures, profitable ideas that businesses can run outside of CSI and CSR. And I see you nodding, Jill, there. Do you want to add something to what I'm saying?
No, I just think this conversation is so lovely that there are intersecting comments. I mean, I was thinking of George speaking about partnerships, and here you are speaking about beyond CSR. It's one of my favorite phrases. So I'm really just loving all these connections that we're creating here. So nothing specific.
Thank you. Welcome back, Barry. Sorry, you got cut off there. And I think I want to refine my question to you. So how do you think you can change the business landscape to achieve the sustainable transformation in Africa?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, before I answer, I would like to clarify one point. We all tend to pretend that we want to change the whole Africa when it's not a single block. Each part of Africa has its own realities. Today, the Maghrebian countries and some English-speaking countries have taken a considerable lead in terms of sustainable development over many countries in West Africa, for example. Therefore, a model designed for a Maghrebian country can in no way fit in a country in West Africa. So before thinking macro, we have to think macro first. I will therefore refer to the case of Morocco and Ivory Coast, two countries that I know quite well. There are many sustainable development initiatives in Morocco and much less in Ivory Coast. And that initiatives are generally state initiatives. I'm not going to dwell too much on this question. And as an entrepreneur, it's first of all to accept, to understand that the model of wealth creation has changed. But when you have entrepreneurs who are obsessed with profits, and we think that sustainable development is not important, we stagnate. Young African entrepreneurs are not aware that it's time for the continent and for their country especially to get ahead of the so-called developed countries. For the young people, I think the youth of Africa is the main point. The main point that we can figure out that if Africa have the most youth people on Earth, so the difference between Western countries and countries like Ivory Coast is that these countries must destroy systems already incurred in their practices and institute a new system linked to sustainable development. Unlike Cote d'Ivoire or Morocco, which has not yet reached the level of Western countries in terms of industrialization, for example. And therefore, it will be much easier for entrepreneurs, for young entrepreneurs, to offer solutions based on sustainable development without creating any real adaptation problems. And also, the political authorities must also be able to support young project leaders. In other words, they must create conditions so that the constraints for the entrepreneurs can be reduced.
Thank you. Thank you. You said something there that resonates with me. The fact that Africa is huge and it's very different, it's very diverse. And I had the opportunity of attending the UNEP FI Global Roundtable for 2020. And one thing that I did realize, which you did echo there, is the fact that the Sustainable Development Agenda is really being embedded in Africa. I think we are not behind the curve. The finance institutions that attended this year, we're talking about some advances that for some of them are far ahead of the Western countries. I mean, offering finance for the SDGs and things like that is something that's already happening within Africa. So I think, Dilona, you would be encouraged to know that this is becoming a regular practice within Africa, and ESG is something that is becoming standard practice even in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So I think the future does look bright, and the SDGs and sustainability is becoming embedded every day. And I think we can definitely expect a better Africa to emerge out of this. So coming back to George one last time, as we start the final round of questions and closing remarks. So George, how can the youth use the SDGs to transform business models that are relevant for the future of business? Or rather, actually, how can businesses use SDGs to transform business models that are relevant for the future of business?
Right. So this is similar to the point I was making earlier, because if we're talking about transforming business models, I'll look at it from a process point of view, because I'm quite a process-oriented person, right? So if you look at your business model, you start from your raw materials, then you go to your operation and processes, manufacturing, and then effectively sales and marketing. At each stage of that process, there's certain things happening at the same time. Internally, you've got your staff members working together, and each company will have its staff culture. How well do people treat themselves? What are the labor laws? And how well is the company applying the labor laws in relation to SDGs? Externally, that company is interacting with customers and other stakeholders. How does it interact from the point of view of so like bribery and corruption, etc. So at every stage of your business model, you can actually look at it and so like pick out an element of the SDGs and think about, all right, how well are we doing there? And there's always an opportunity for improvement. There's always an opportunity to tweak. There's always an opportunity to innovate at every stage of your business model, depending on where you are. So as I was saying earlier, I think the starting point is you literally take a step back, look at your organization. As I mentioned, you've got the actual business model which you can look at, but then you've also got the people that make the business model happen. So you've got the company culture is there, and the SDGs for the most part can be used as a benchmark, as a mirror to compare against that. So it's sort of like start with a benchmarking exercise. I can talk about solutions, but there's many solutions depending on where you are. But I think organizations themselves are best suited to identify what works best for them based on that initial analysis. And as I mentioned, what we do at PMI is because of our expertise in project management, we deliver a lot of hours of free project management around the globe. Whether it's helping to provide clean water by executing projects or training people to run projects. to various other initiatives. So there's a lot of free project management, but also free resources that we provide. And there's also just one thing I want to mention, just in terms of not only enabling organizations, but also enabling people, generally the youth. And this is the reason I'm mentioning it, because it's about enabling those who are not necessarily experts or professionals in a specific area, which tends to be the case with youth. So we're also, creating opportunities and developing products that allow you to do that. So for example, you should look into something called citizen development. So we have a product called Citizen Developer, and what it allows you to do as a not professional person is to actually build an app without knowing how to code. And so, we run initiatives like that, because once you put that into the hands of somebody with an idea, with an entrepreneur who has a fantastic idea but doesn't necessarily know how to code, is a game changer. I don't want to sound dramatic, but it reminds me of my history class when I learned about the moment when Shaka Zulu broke the spear, and created the assegai from the long spear, which was actually used by specific people, to the short one where it just it made people a lot more nimble and a lot more able to execute. So I feel like this is kind of a moment like that. I don't want to sound dramatic, but I'm passionate about it, as you can see. So look up Citizen Developer. I think it's going to be a game changer in terms of enabling youth and people who are not experts in coding to be able to build impactful solutions.
Thank you. We'll look up Citizen Developer. It sounds exciting. I mean, I've had many ideas for apps, but I don't know how to code, so I'll definitely be playing around with it later.
Yeah.
Dilona and Jill and Barry, so closing remarks. I think for Dilona, I just want to know, so based on your YSIP experience, what was the biggest lesson that you could say you took out of it?
Let's see. Personally, I've learned to have an open mindset. In the Young SDG Innovators Program, we were constantly challenged to think about our organization's challenges, in that we shouldn't be looking at solving for and contributing to CSI or CSR initiatives. The one word that keeps resonating with me over and over is think exponentially. And that was the biggest lesson I think we all really took away from it. I also learned that your mindset has to shift to future thinking as well. Learning to be proactive and not reactive to the SDGs. And also just at an organizational level and my role within the organization as well. It's really helped me to redefine and articulate impact investing differently, and using that to actually benchmark and really define different investments when they do come to us, and look at the potential that each of them has in achieving the SDGs.
Thank you very much. Any closing remarks from you, Barry, in 30 seconds? All right. We'll come back to you. Yeah, he's on mute. We'll come back to you, Barry. Jill, okay. Closing remarks from you. What were your biggest lessons from YSIP? I'll come back to you, Barry, just now.
Okay.
My biggest lessons from YSIP. Well, I was going to tell you about the 3 Ps, and then I got to the 4 Ps. Now you're asking me specifically about YSIP, but let me give you my short closing remarks, because they come from Barry and George and Dilona. The first is purpose-driven. that SDGs is part of core strategy. It's not tinkering around the edges. It's, as Dilona said, going exponential, and there's a P in the middle of exponential. So there's a P there as well. You've got to go big. You've got to go bold. The next is partnerships, another word for collaboration, and so important what Barry is saying, that's what's helped him in his business. The other is potential, and this is the potential that we have in Africa and elsewhere around the world, which is the young people who may not have the skills that are sitting on a job description, but they have skills, they have expertise, they have ideas, and they have another P, which is passion. And that it allows us to develop opportunities for individuals, opportunities for communities, for organizations, for growth of the in business and in the economy. So there are P's all over the place, some of them in the middle of words and some at the beginning of the words. That's my closing statement.
Definitely more than 4 P's there, but I took it down. So purpose-driven, exponential, partnerships, potential, and passion. A lot of P's, and I think that's exactly what Africa needs more than anything. And very final remarks from you.
Okay, so I think that the entrepreneur, the African entrepreneur, should no longer be confined to the creation of profitable businesses by omitting his societal responsibility. The pursuit of profit, yes, but not at the expense of the earth and the people. The entrepreneur must be a provider of innovative and disruptive solutions that perfectly meet the challenges of our era, of our time. And we have enormous challenges for this generation, which is suffering the full consequences of the actions of previous generation. Therefore, we must all work together, and the dream will be to have in every field, in every sector, entrepreneur with a certain ethic, with values and a strong desire to impact the community. It's all start there, yeah, with the impact of the community.
I couldn't have closed it any better. Thank you very much. And that brings our segment to a close, and I hope people will take away something from this segment. Personally, I'm going to have to watch it again to know, to learn, because when you're in an experience, it's different to when you're outside of it. So, but I've learned a lot from you guys. I need to know what I said throughout this, because I don't know what I said, but I know what you said. And there's a lot to do, there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to research. And George, just give us the name of that platform again, and we'll be out of here.
Citizen Developer. Citizen Developer. It's gonna be, if I understand correctly, it's gonna be on the booth with this program. There's a booth where a PMI booth where people can go and see it. But also you can just Google PMI Citizen Developer. As I said, it enables people who are not developer professionals to actually build apps, and it's a game changer.
Thank you. Definitely visit the booth and check it out on the PMI website. With that, thank you very much. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, George, Dilona, and Barry. It's been wonderful chatting to you for the past hour. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.